I'm going to quickly show you how to balance your bowls, your live edge bowls, on the lathe really quick. And I'm also going to show you a quick little tip that I learnt off a senior wood turner. So let's get right into it. First things first, what you will need is your bowl blank. And this piece here in particular is a 10-inch piece of salmon gum found here in Australia. It's a eucalypt. And how I will mount this bowl blank is between centers. So I will need my drive dog that goes into the spindle, and I'll also need a cup center, and this will go into the tailstock. And the reason why I use a cup center, and I think you should as well, is because if you use your cone center, it will continually dig into the grain and forcing it apart, and you'll constantly have to be readjusting and checking the tension when it's between centers. So if you have this, it covers a lot larger surface area and it pushes into the wood and won't keep penetrating through. So that goes into there. You will also need a mallet, the trusty old mallet, and some tape. Preferably something that's contrasting to your lathe. Got some tape here, and this is painter's tape, so it doesn't leave a residue, even though my lathe is up for a spray paint. Let's get into it and mount this bowl onto the lathe. Before, when I cut this on the bandsaw, I screwed my template in, my 10-inch template, and I'm going to use the same hole with my drive dog. Give that a quick blow and make sure it's firmly in place. And now I'll put the drive dog into the spindle. Holding the blank underneath with my left hand, I'm going to bring up the tailstock. As I do that, I look down the blank and make sure it's plumb. I also do it by eye and make sure that's roughly in the center. Now, one thing to note when you're doing this is not to drive the cup center into the meat of the wood. The reason being is because if you make heaps of holes, it'll just make it harder to adjust later on, because it's likely to go and find that hole again. Plus, we'll need to adjust this, so there's no point tightening right up because you'll need to do adjustments anyway. But we will lock it off. Now I've got the blank mounted on the lathe. I just turn the blank and make sure it's not going to, if it's a really big blank, I don't want it hitting anything when I'm adjusting, because then you just have to adjust all over again and you'll be double handling, something that I do quite frequently. So I'm just going to turn that around, and there's a bit too much slot in that, so turn that around. I'm going to start with the low point of the bowl blank, and this is where tape will come in handy. So now I've put the tape on the lathe, not very straight. I'm going to marry it up with this point here. And now you don't have to use tape. You can just hold your pencil there, or people might get a bit upset about this, but you could mark the tool rest with the pencil, which will come off. Look, comes off straight away. I swear it does. But you can mark your tool rest if you like with your pencil, or you can use some tape. Tape is marked there on this point of the low side of the blank. I then turn it over, and now I realise that this point here is higher. If it's too close, it needs to move away. If it's too far away, it needs to come back. So I'll show you how I quickly adjust this. So I take the weight of the blank from underneath, I loosen off the tailstock, and then I shift it away, tighten it back up, come back around, and then check to make sure it's running true on both sides. One thing you need to take into consideration, if you need to make big changes, it will then throw the grain orientation off. So when it's sitting there on the table, the grain won't flow up through the sides. It might look a little bit off, but that's something that might be pleasing to the eye to you. So now the low points are balanced. I will start on the high point. I just move my tape to this high point here, bring it around, and now that I see I have to move the blank away from me because it's too high of the tape. So then all I need to do is the same thing as before. Take the weight of the blank, loosen off the tailstock, try not to move it around, and then bring the blank away from me. Tighten up that tailstock, because that should be our last movement, but I'll just check. And now that is looking really nice. So once that's done, tighten it up and lock it off. So it wasn't until I actually finished the video and started turning the base of this bowl, the main thing I forgot to tell you about. And the main thing is, the reason why I used the tape method to begin with is because a lot of my live edge bowls looked unbalanced and they didn't look pleasing to the eye. The grain orientation was tilted really extreme, or I had some really high points and some really low points. So I had an old wood turner reach out to me and said, just put a bit of tape or mark the tool rest with your pencil, and then that way, when you've got the point where you need to marry up to, and you come around to the back of the bowl to adjust, you don't forget the point of where you need to marry the other side up to. I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. I need to align this high point here with the other high point on the other side. And for example, if I don't use the tape or just do it by memory, I come around to the back, loosen off the tailstock, make an adjustment, thinking I'm doing the right thing, come back and then go, oh, actually I forgot where I needed to go. So then I need to move the bowl blank again, come back and check again. And it just makes for a really lengthy process when it can all be alleviated just by marking it with maybe a little pencil on your tool rest or using a bit of tape, just to speed things up for you in the beginning, and then you'll be able to do it really quickly with no aids at all, no tape or pencil. So it's just a quick little note that I forgot to mention in filming this video. Cheers.